Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a completely fascinating spiritual text, one that actually claims to uncover the hidden history of a forgotten god. We're going to be looking specifically at a spiritual revelation recorded on January 17th, 2018. We'll be focusing heavily on chapter 1 of this source material, which introduces us to the ancient Greek and Egyptian god Ophearis. It's this wild blend of mythology, spirituality, and alternative history, and we're going to break down exactly what this text has to say.
All right, here's our agenda for today. We'll cover 1. The mysterious god Ophearis, 2. His Aegean Sea kingdom, 3. His transformation into Osiris, 4. The betrayal and magical resurrection, and 5. The legacy of that resurrection. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The mysterious god Ophearis, a deity missing from history.
So, we're kicking things off with a pretty profound mystery. This book right here is our primary source, and it presents a spiritual revelation about a deity that, well, standard history books have completely missed. The text states that Ophearis isn't just some minor footnote. No, the author claims he's the true unified root of both Greek and Egyptian mythology. It basically posits that the totally distinct myths we all know today actually stem from the life of this one very real individual.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast. On one hand, traditional historical documents. Nothing. Absolutely no recorded mention of a god or king named Ophearis. But on the other hand, the spiritual revelation identifies him as a very real, hugely influential historical figure. The text actually openly acknowledges this gap, framing Ophearis as a sort of lost puzzle piece of human history that standard archaeological records just haven't caught up with yet.
To really grasp who Ophearis is, we have to look at his spiritual lineage according to the text. It introduces the supreme earth god, Cantare, and the revelation states that Ophearis wasn't just a myth, but a literal divine incarnation on earth, specifically a brother soul to Cantare. So, right out of the gate, the text establishes Ophearis as an entity with immense spiritual authority and a major divine purpose.
Section 2. The Aegean Sea Kingdom, an ancient Mediterranean realm.
Long before he allegedly set foot in Egypt, the text outlines the sheer scale of the civilization Ophearis ruled. Look at this map. We're talking about a vast territory spanning all the way from Greece down across the Mediterranean and straight into Egypt. The revelation claims the heart of this massive realm was centered around Delos Island in the Aegean Sea. It paints a picture of a deeply connected ancient Mediterranean world, all operating under one unified rule. The text lays out some very specific characteristics of this reign. It asserts this all flourished approximately 6,500 years ago. As I mentioned, it was centered on Delos Island, functioning as this massive, unified maritime kingdom. And here's the real kicker. The revelation claims this era under Ophearis laid the absolute groundwork for what would eventually become Western civilization. We aren't talking about a primitive society here. The text describes this Mediterranean kingdom as the absolute center of the world at that time.
Section 3. Transformation into Osiris. The journey to Egypt.
So how exactly does a Greek king become an Egyptian god? Well, the spiritual revelation maps out a very specific timeline. We start 6,500 years ago with Ophearis ruling his Aegean Sea territory. Then, decades later, he leads this massive, super ambitious expedition across the Mediterranean right into Egypt. And then, millennia later, his Greek origins are just entirely forgotten by mainstream historians, and he's remembered purely as an Egyptian myth. Basically, the text argues that the mythology we know today is just the result of thousands of years of historical distortion. According to the author, when this Greek king arrived in Egypt, he brought immense prosperity, new tech, and a massive cultural boom to the people. And because of this incredible societal uplift, he was so revered by the locals that they gave him a new name, Osiris. Yep, according to this text, Ophearis and Osiris are literally the exact same person. It takes the Greek king and makes him the very figure we know from the ancient Egyptian pantheons. Crazy, right?
Section 4. Betrayal and magical resurrection, the truth behind the myth.
This brings us to the climax of the narrative, explaining the dark, dramatic events that birthed the famous Osiris myth. The crucial point here is that the text frames this famous mythological betrayal as a literal, historical event. Step 1, he returns from an expedition and is tricked into a specially made coffin by his jealous brother, Seth. Step 2, that sealed coffin is just cast adrift into the Nile River. Step 3, His body is eventually recovered, but then violently scattered across the land by Seth to prevent his return. And finally, step 4, he's resurrected via his wife Isis's magic. The source totally rejects the idea that this is just symbolic folklore. It treats it as an actual historical assassination.
And let's talk about the mechanics of that miracle, the magic of Isis. The author emphasizes that this magical resurrection wasn't a metaphor, it was a literal manifestation of divine power. According to the revelation, Isis tirelessly gathered his scattered remains and managed to successfully resurrect Osiris, not just once, but twice. It's a really fascinating interpretation, taking ancient magic and rooting it in a tangible, literal spiritual phenomenon.
Section 5. Legacy of the Resurrection, Shaping World Religions.
Finally, we have to look at the lasting cultural impact this alleged event had. The text posits that this really profound faith in resurrection didn't just vanish with the ancient Egyptians. It didn't just end in the tombs of the pharaohs. Instead, the spiritual revelation asserts that the belief system built around Osiris's miraculous return to life survived for thousands of years, subtly carrying forward into future civilizations and deeply influencing subsequent thought systems.
Which brings the author's core thesis home. Look at this comparison. On one side, you have the faith of Osiris, which is deeply rooted in the belief of physical restoration and magical resurrection based on Ophelia's life. On the other side, you have Christianity, centering on the theology of Jesus' resurrection and the second coming. The author is outlining a direct spiritual lineage here, arguing that the resurrection of Osiris heavily and directly influenced the core tenets of Christianity. It implies this shared spiritual DNA across religions we normally think of as completely separate. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final thought to consider. If ancient myths are indeed rooted in historical, spiritual events, how does that reframe our understanding of the world's modern religions? It's a huge question. Whether you view this January 2018 text as a literal spiritual revelation or just a really fascinating reimagining of ancient history, it definitely forces us to think about the hidden intersections of myth, history, and faith. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the mystery of Ophealis. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.